My name is Kate McMahon, and I am the host today of our Profile Show. And I'd like to begin by introducing you to our guests. Thank you for being here today.
Hi.
Hello. We have Kathi Bailey, and she is the Executive Director of the Yarmouth Council on Aging. And we have Mary Wagan, who also is with the Yarmouth Council on Aging. And lastly, Annamarie Pluhar from sharinghousing.org.
Yes.
Welcome. Thank you.
Nice to be here.
Today we have two topics that I find very, very interesting. And if we can, I would like to begin with the concept and the actual process that you all have in place in regards to intergenerational community. But before we start, could you each tell me and the audience a little bit about yourselves and your background? Kathi, can you start?
Sure. So I'm Kathi Bailey, Director of Senior Services for the town of Yarmouth. And we actually have an age-friendly community team. And I'm just making that little distinction from the councils on aging across Massachusetts. So Yarmouth's a little unique in that way. But my background was mostly in the computer and telecommunications industry as a business analyst, followed by a master's degree in regional economics and social development, and then 15 years of aging advocacy. So I have a little bit of this, a little bit of that, and now I'm on Cape Cod.
That's great. Well, welcome to Cape Cod.
Thank you.
And Mary, can you
Hi.
share?
Yes, so I work for the town of Yarmouth, and I'm the administrator of the Affordable Housing Program. And it's been my delight to work with Kathi and Annamarie because they got me to realize it's not all about affordable housing, it's about housing for everybody in town, making sure everybody has safe and decent housing. And so I'm thrilled to be here and participating in this program.
Great. And I'm really looking forward to understanding the difference that you just mentioned.
Okay.
Annamarie?
So I'm Annamarie, and I wrote a book called Sharing Housing, a guidebook for finding and keeping good housemates, which leads me to here, because what I've started to do is to advocate for people to discover that they can share housing. I got to this through a lot of different things, including once upon a time a master's in divinity, which informs some of the way I think about this, and years as a management consultant and as an instructional designer writing training. So I bring a lot of different things, and I am really working on helping people realize they can do this, and I'm delighted to be here. I have a long background with the Cape family, but I live in southern Vermont now.
Well, welcome.
Thank you.
Thank you for being here today. So perhaps we can begin with Annamarie and Mary addressing how Yarmouth is a community-friendly area.
Well,
How about with we talk about house sharing to begin?
sure. So Yarmouth invited me to come down and do a workshop, which I did about 3 weeks ago, a half-day workshop, which is part of helping people understand why sharing housing is such a good idea. And what I say is that I believe that people can have a home mate, that is somebody that they like and respect, whose way of living at home is compatible enough that everybody is comfortable. And I think this is really important for older people because so many end up living alone for lots of very good reasons. And then they're just alone. And one of the stats that I found was that in Barnstable County, there are 44% of the people over the age of 65 living alone. And that's expensive as well as lonely. And I can talk for the entire interview, but I will stop and let you ask questions.
Alrighty. How about next we talk a little bit about the acceptance here on the Cape of house sharing. I know you had a great turnout at the event that you held 3 weeks ago. Can you share with us a little bit about the audience? And
So it was held May 10th at the Yarmouth Senior Center. We had 28 wonderful participants. It was a half-day workshop. It was very interactive. People asked a lot of great questions. Annamarie led them through the process of starting to think about sharing housing. Energy levels stayed up the whole time, and I had the opportunity to talk to people afterwards about actually the brick and mortar piece of it. After you think about, well, could I have a homemade? Okay, how do I go about doing that? And I thought people were they have some serious plans about making an accessory apartment in their home, or started to consider a homemate, which would basically rent a room out of the home and share the living space and the kitchen.
That's great.
So I think one of the things that's true about this idea is that a lot of people are afraid of maybe it's like, oh no, I don't want to give up my privacy, or I couldn't have a stranger live with me. And that's a first reaction, and it's totally understandable because home is sanctuary. But if they think about it a little bit longer, and this has happened in the workshop, people said, oh yeah, I used to live with people. We had really a good time. It was fun. And I think that we sort of forget that when people live together and it's just working, they never tell stories about it. We only hear the bad stories. So I'm working hard on telling the good stories because I don't know why so many people live alone, and it's expensive. I mean, I think that that's a real problem for people here on the Cape, is that housing has been, and it actually anywhere, housing has just gotten phenomenally expensive, and a lot of people don't have good incomes. What was the stat you just gave us about?
Sure, Annamarie, that 32% of the older persons living in Yarmouth are at or below the economic security standard level.
32%.
So out of 9,000 seniors, you have almost 3,000 that are just able to pay for the basics.
And if you think about it, and many of them are house rich, right? I mean, they have a 2-bedroom, a 3-bedroom kind of house. And if they can see their way into sharing that house, $500 a month, which is a cheap rent these days, turns into $6,000 in a year. That's a lot of money. And that could be the difference between constantly biting your fingers and feeling like you're comfortable.
Right. So that's a great segue into what you said, Mary, early on, is the difference between affordable housing and housing. Can you share with us a little bit?
Sure. So, 45% of the people who live in Yarmouth can't afford the housing that they have right now. So for your housing costs to be affordable to you, it can be no more than 30% of your income. We have a goal in Yarmouth to create 10% of our year-round housing stock to be affordable as defined by the state. So it serves a low moderate income household, it's deed restricted, it's fairly marketed, there's a lottery, and there's all these things you have to do. But even after that 10% goal is met, there's still going to be a need just because of the way the housing market is down here. There's a lot of seasonal use, there's a lot of seasonal jobs, there's a lot of people that are aging out in their homes. So what's nice about the age-friendly model that Yarmouth has embraced is it stops putting affordable in front of the housing. It's just housing, making sure everybody is safely and decently housed.
That's great. Thank you for that explanation. And does that lead us a little bit to independence versus interdependence when we talk about house sharing?
I guess that's mine. So a lot of people think they want to be independent all the time. But the truth of the matter is, as humans, we need to be interdependent. We rely on each other. And one of the things that happens is that families and couples rely on each other in all kinds of ways that go unnoticed. Because it's just the way we do things. My joke is that I haven't bought a roll of toilet paper in 18 years because I have a housemate that does that part of our home together. So we are interdependent. You have more to say about that?
This could be a good segue, Kate, to our Caring Communities workshop that we
Yes,
hosted on
absolutely,
Thursday.
absolutely.
A little framework for this going into these events. Yarmouth was funded by Tufts Health Plan Foundation for our intergenerational age-friendly community approach. And that is how we were afforded the opportunity to host both Annamarie Pluhar and Mary hosting the shared housing workshop and our Caring Communities workshop. But the center of the Caring Community workshop was about ageism. And ageism is this thread of conversation about interdependence. And in fact, Annamarie's correct. And that's what all the experts will say, and what we all know as human beings. None of us do any of this alone. Right? And family is one element, but community is the other element. And how we construct these pieces of our lives matter very much. So we have this issue with ageism in our country that many people will think is an older person's issue, that people are ageist against older people. Mostly came from the Grey Panthers, and Maggie Kuhn did such excellent work. How many years ago, Annamarie?
She was big in the 70s.
Yeah, to get rid of their forced retirement and loosen our thoughts about a number defining us as we age. And that work is still very much underway, but we also know that ageism is discrimination toward the young people as well, and so we're still evolving in our conversation about ageism. An older person might speak very poorly of a younger person, thinking that they're lazy or they're not capable or whatever negative stereotype is placed upon the young, just like they've always known that the young would put a stereotype about an older person, that old geezer, or whatever the negative term would be. So we hosted this great workshop to lift that thought up, remove those barriers, so we can see each other as different age cohorts that are brought up in different times with different social influences. And how do we understand each other? And so a lot of the work that went on in the workshop that both of you worked so hard on was lifting those barriers a little bit. What do you need to ask each other to get through some of those generational differences to start to live together? Right?
Yeah.
And you guys had a lot of activity on that.
Lots of activity. So when I do a workshop, I'm interested in having people work with each other and talk to each other and explore things. So we had people talking about how they might live in housing together and what the benefits are. I was thinking about your ageism piece. One of the things that I think I encounter when I'm working on sharing housing is that people say, oh, wait, I couldn't do that. I've never done it before. And it's a kind of like, I don't change. I'm set. I got set when I was 20 years old. Well, you didn't get set when you were 20 years old. And people can change. I actually have a slide of old dog learning new tricks.
Isn't that great?
But it's, so where was I going to go? I lost my thread.
Well, then, in other words, the conversation is so important.
Huge.
Between the generations. And I'm sure it takes a little bit of time to have the generations change. Not only our more elderly, but also the younger seeing the benefits.
Absolutely. So the governor has decided that Massachusetts will be an age-friendly state. And New York is another state that's going after this age-friendly Guns-Ho initiative, and so we love that challenge because the Red Sox always beat the Yankees. So Massachusetts is ready, but Yarmouth carries the flag for it with an intergenerational lens. We think that's really important because our caregiving workforce are our younger people. We need them to have a quality of life for themselves and their families and their school system in order for them to care for us as we age. And so you cannot really build an age-friendly community without it being an intergenerational approach. And we know from the evidence when UMass was funded by Tufts Health Plan Foundation to do an age-friendly study for Yarmouth, housing, caregiving, and transportation, all age groups have the same challenges with the affordability and the accessibility of these things. So we have more in common than we have different. And so we're really advocates for that. And any kind of reform in policy improvements to get us from this 1950s models of building the suburbs and a retirement community on Cape Cod, right?
Right.
To what we really need today includes shared housing, and it includes caring community workshops where people learn how to see their differences, see their biases, and work together to find some common good. We really need to do more of that. We had 92 people registered for our workshop Thursday night with Professor Nancy Henkin. She came up from Philly.
Pretty good.
And you know, it was very interactive, like Annamarie, the style of any of the national best practice folks when we bring them in, that it's very interactive. We want to give the power to the citizens to build these things for themselves. It's not going to be a top-down, we tell you how it should be. We want you at the table so that you can help us understand and build something that really works for people rather than a theory somewhere out in a university somewhere that never gets applied to practice. We're all about the people.
The people.
The people.
And getting people, and helping people understand that they really can do this. I mean, we're talking about multi-generational, you can picture having somebody who is house rich, who's in her late 60s, early 70s, she's going, I don't need that yet. But the thing is, you find the relationship before you need it. And there are younger people in their 20s and 30s, 40s, 50s who could be fabulous homemates with each other. And there's so many good stories about people, but I don't have a local one. I want a local one. So if anybody knows a local one, please let me know.
So I do.
Good.
So we have a household who has an accessory apartment.
Yep.
And it's an affordable, deed-restricted accessory apartment up in Yarmouth Port. And they have always gotten the greatest tenants through the restaurant workers in Yarmouth along Route 28. And that's where they've always kind of tried to pull their tenants from. And they're all single, young people working in restaurants, starting their lives.
Right.
And they're living in this accessory apartment. And yeah, there's some conversation a little bit about what's expected of each other beforehand.
Yes.
And
Beforehand. She's pointing at me like that because that is the thing I say over and over and over again.
That's key, I'm
Please,
sure.
you have to do the selection process well.
Right? And written agreements.
And written agreements.
The written rental agreement. I think what's nice about the affordable program is all those things. You have the models of all those agreements that you have to use, so it's all there. But it's worked out very nicely. And I'm hoping for more units like that to come online in Yarmouth. My dream is really to have a sharing housing network so that you have people who are housing rich, right? And people who, work here either seasonally or have that really nice job in the summer in our tourism industry, matched up with people who would benefit from having a housemate.
That's great. That's a great story. Yeah. I'm with Annamarie. Can't wait to hear more of those. Now, overall, what are your next steps? Because both of these programs are just wonderful, and I think I mentioned when I first talked to Kathi, I wasn't familiar with them, and so I'm sure you're going to keep this ball rolling. So can you share some of the things you intend to do, Kathi?
Sure. So Yarmouth is up for a 5-year reset for our age-friendly membership with the World Health Organization, and now that the whole state is moving forward, so we'll be regrouping, and setting a 5-year plan, some of which could include hosting several more workshops with Annamarie Pluhar across the Cape, because we've also launched a Cape-wide initiative. Barnstable County Health and Human Services leading the age-friendly initiative for the region, but Yarmouth was tasked to be the catalyst for that through our grant funding, which was a lot of work for Yarmouth, but we are pretty proud of that. So now we're working with our neighbors. All 15 towns are signed on with Barnstable County Health and Human Services to work on an age-friendly community.
That's,
Right?
that's
So
amazing.
housing,
That's great.
transportation, and caregiving, we already know this data they're going to continue to get more and more attention. So Heather Harper is our good friend at the Cape Cod Commission, working very closely to open more space for these things. So I imagine we'll be trying to find new and innovative ways to train people how to do this, right?
Yes, and I am completely open to being invited and asked, and I am on this campaign to advocate for shared housing and to help people learn how to do it. So I love the fact that Kathi has me here, but it doesn't have to be just through Yarmouth Age Friendly. I'm open to lots of invites.
Yeah, so we could put that shout out to the church communities and to other nonprofits and to the other councils on aging. You know, by all means, please follow, duplicate, improve upon everything that we work on in Yarmouth and make it fit for your community in your way. But that's kind of what we're all about, just sharing information. There's a really interesting young group of 2 women out of MIT that started
the
Nesterly app.
Yep.
So once you have this understanding, to me this is the first base, right?
Yep.
The understanding of how to do this, then you can start to evolve. And I think P-Town played with this a little bit with some of these apps that'll do the matching piece and the logistics, like Mary. And Mary will probably be the queen of that dream on Cape Cod, because she's already has that vision. So, you know, I think with the governor in Massachusetts being fully supportive of this thing, we'll be able to find some resources to help all of us lift these things more and more and more together on Cape Cod. Yeah, I believe that'll happen.
And that's very exciting that the
It is very
entire
exciting.
Cape, 15 towns have signed on.
Yeah.
Sure. That was really brilliant work of Beth Albert up at Barnstable County Health and Human Services and Vera Herrick. They've been in the game on this since day one when Yarmouth first applied, and they have stayed with the whole thing, and you know, so many other agencies as well. But I've got to give great credit for the regional lift to Beth and Vera. Yeah, they're
That's
pretty
great.
fabulous. Yeah,
And
we have great partners, right?
We do, and what's nice is that the model really gives individual towns that flexibility to put their own, you know, spin on it.
Yeah.
Do you know what I mean? Like, you know, I'm always encouraging when I go and talk about housing with other towns, one of the first things I say, you know, is, you know, I encourage them to have listening sessions, to listen to what will work in their town.
Right.
And even though I call it one big small town here on the Cape, there are regional differences.
There are.
And you know, Yarmouth is going to be starting to do some listening sessions in September, and hopefully, you know, that will inspire other things to come forward. We've really concentrated on a lot of brick and mortar building of affordable housing in Yarmouth, and I'm hoping to kind of bring that to housing services like sharing housing, et cetera.
That's great. So you mentioned that you're going to be doing these listening sessions in September. Can you tell our viewers where they can find out more information on dates and times of these events?
So this would be run by the Yarmouth Community Housing Committee, and their agendas are on our website. I'm hoping to have set a date. I haven't set a date yet.
Okay.
But usually September works out good. We're done with the
Great.
beach, right? All the
Right.
kids are back to school, or
that's true.
you know, it's the time to kind of go to trainings and workshops and sharpen the tools to get our work done for the year.
great.
And I'm hoping to do it, you know, in cooperation with other departments in the town, including the Age Friendly, you know, group, and really have it be collaborative. We have a community preservation program that's wonderful, and really have it be, you know, this opening up of, okay, what do you want to see next, right? Does it all have to be about the 10% goal that we all have in the state? Can it be other things? And what would work here? Based on our May 10th workshop with Annamarie, definitely there's a lot of support for sharing housing. I mean, and based on our dinner last week, the Caring Community,
Right. So
people were
exciting.
asking us, when can we come back and start working on all of this?
Right.
So
We have a lot
that
of- we're building
enthusiasm.
momentum.
the spark has been set, you know, and I think it's gonna make the Cape even a better place to be.
That's great. So we'll just point everybody to your website and know that very soon that you'll have that date set for folks to learn more.
Absolutely.
Can I tell people that I have a website called sharinghousing.com, which is for the individuals. And I have a lot of resources on it, including a set of interviews I've done, which I call Real People Sharing Housing. And it's stories about people and what they're doing and how they got there. And I think that those are interesting for people to read.
That's great. It sounds like a good place for people to start to
That's
learn
what I
more.
hope. Yeah.
Yeah.
So Kate, I would like to just point out in summary for this strategic piece for us to move forward, one thing that Yarmouth really understands now is that we need to listen to one another, facilitate places and spaces where a diverse group of people can collect and start to get involved. That's what you were noticing Thursday night in particular, right? And we know that we're still not reaching. This is going to be a surprise to our older persons, right? We're not really reaching our 40-year-olds, our 30-year-olds, and our 20-year-olds. And we need a lot of help in figuring out how do we make sure that those people are at the table building their communities. And our homebound people. So do we use technology? Do we host events in different places than we've done in the past? How do we think differently to make sure that our working people can attend? Is it the brevity of the meeting? Is it the technology we need? Or is it the location that we host things in? We want to ensure in Yarmouth that we're getting the voices of all of those people, not the small group of committee members that are already engaged in government, but all the people. So we really have to roll up our sleeves and get more innovative as to how we do these listening sessions. I know Mary
Got me
is
thinking,
Kathy.
Kathy.
She's definitely on our
That's
team,
great.
but our age-friendly team has that gauntlet thrown out to us, you know, because we're carrying that flag for ageism as an intergenerational community building. So I don't want anyone to think for 1 minute that an age-friendly Yarmouth is about just the older people. It is not. It is not for us. And so when the Cape does their age-friendly community building, some towns may take an over 50 approach. That may be true. As Mary said, every town is very different. But if the governor is listening, hello, Mr. Baker. Yarmouth would like you to make it an intergenerational, age-friendly Massachusetts, and then we will surely beat the Yankees at this one.
Oh, thank you for that. And thank you for being here today. Are there any additional points that you would like to make that perhaps I missed?
What do you think, Mary?
The only thing I always say is to people who reside on the Cape, you know, sign up and volunteer with your town. There's a lot of exciting and wonderful things. Whatever your passion is, there's a committee or a group working on that through your town. And some of these wonderful ideas that, you know, I have the privilege of executing come from people just popping into my office and saying, Mary, what if we did that? And it ends up being the most popular program we've ever had. So, you know, people, yes, town employees can be very busy and we're always typing away at our computers, but get involved because it's a great ride.
Yeah.
And we are trying harder to listen better, right, Mary? We really are.
New perspective that they bring. And
Absolutely.
creativity sometimes.
Creativity.
Yeah,
Sure.
that's great. Anne-Marie, anything you would like to share?
I think when I said that about the website, that was probably my closing thing, but
Okay.
I will back you up on participating in town. I have a sister who lives in Wellfleet who's been on the recycling committee for years and before that was on the school board, and I'm a planning commissioner for my town. So yeah, it's really important to participate and vote.
Yeah, we were really just talking about this the other day about can we have meetings without people physically in attendance? We're still very much old Puritans, and we think we have, well, with technology, maybe people can virtually attend. How wonderful for me to think about the 95-year-old homebound person that could stay on my committee and be home and be part of the meeting and lend that wisdom. Or the working mother, that could be maybe taking that long 30-minute drive and participating in a meeting, right? So like, I think we need to open space and not stay in this 1950s way of organizing even government structure and committee. And so we're trying to see, and I think that's hard for people. A lot of people are like, no. But a dream would be to have all of our homebound elders be able to participate in town meeting right from their homes. I mean, I think that would be so exciting to see what could come from that.
That would
Don't
be
get me
great.
started. I have lots of ideas.
And like we were talking about earlier, technology is moving at the speed of light.
Right.
So perhaps the technology is already out there or it's on its way shortly, and I hope that dream can come true really quickly for you.
Yeah, we're hoping. We're
Yeah,
hoping.
good.
Well, thank you so much for being here. I really appreciated the conversation.
Thank you
Thanks
for
for having us, Kate.
Thank
And
you.
thank you for being here.